Isn't banana bread just great? Like, who doesn't love banana bread? Unless you don't love bananas or you don't love bread. I guess I get it. But if you love bananas and bread, you love banana bread. I had these bananas hanging out around my house, and they've been around a little bit too long, and they're not good for just plain eating. So, when you make a banana bread, you want to choose very ripe bananas. That will make a big difference. The riper the banana, the sweeter the bread. Banana bread is also a great recipe for somebody who's new to baking. It's not complicated, you don't have any special techniques that you have to use, the ingredients are simple. So if you're new to baking, I highly suggest you try this recipe out because it's really simple. When I'm baking and cooking, I try my best to make it simple. I will always prefer a simple recipe over a complicated one. So in this case, I'm just going to use one bowl and I'm going to use that potato masher just to mix everything up. I think I'll use like a spatula at the end to scrape it because that's a very different tool. But I try my best to make it simple, which sometimes means I might not be doing it right technically, but I'm okay with that because the simpler a recipe is, the more likely I am to make it. If it's too hard to make, I'm probably just gonna talk myself out of it and not wind up making it at all. So I'll always go for the simplest version of stuff. So I'm adding the wet ingredients here. In this case, I'm including the sugar too and mixing them together. In this bowl, I have 3 mashed up bananas, half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, I have half a cup of vegetable oil, and 2 tablespoons of milk. I added in 1 1/8 cup of sugar and 1 egg, and I mixed them all together really well. Now I'm adding in the dry ingredients. And a lot of times they say put it in a separate bowl and mix all the dry ingredients together. What I do is I just put the flour first, and then I put the smaller amount of the um, baking soda and the salt, and I just superficially mix it on top so there's no clumps of it, and then I just mix them all together. So what I wound up adding was 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and quarter teaspoon of salt. And now I'm mixing them together. The dry and the wet ingredients have been mixed together. I was careful not to overmix them. And once those two are combined, you can still see there's a little bit of dry flour. That's okay because I still have to fold in the walnuts. So right now I'm chopping up half a cup of walnuts. I'm going to fold it in. So you don't want to overmix the batter because that kind of makes it a little bit tough. This is a very nice and tender banana bread, so I just left it a little bit undermixed. And after I get the walnuts in there, I'm going to switch the tools because I need to scrape the outside or the outer rim of the bowl to get those dry bits in there. And I'm just folding it in, which means I'm putting the spatula at the bottom, lifting it up, and turning it over, not over mixing it again. So this type of bread is really flexible with what you put in it. You can just have a banana bread with no nuts, but in this case, I have the walnuts mixed in. Last time I made this, I had walnuts mixed in, and I had pecans or pecans, I don't know how you say that, chopped up on the top, and that was delicious. I've made this recipe with chocolate chips. I've made it with chocolate chips and raisins. You could do dried fruit, you could do chocolate, you could do a variety of nuts. You could add additional spices if you want to. So just kind of consider this like a basic recipe that you can tailor to fit what you like. So I was making this banana bread to bring it to a potluck. And so usually when I make this, I make them into muffins. Like I have muffin liners that I use for this recipe. But in this case, I felt like it would just be better if it was in a loaf because I could cut it into smaller pieces since it was a potluck. And so I used a loaf pan like this. Previously, when I've cooked in loaf pans, just in general, sometimes things stick. So what I did in this case, I sprayed it with Pam or like a nonstick spray, and then I put parchment paper in there. And that made it really easy to get out because um, it can kind of rip or tear if you try to take it out when it's warm. And this is just really easy. So I just used those clothespins, that's what I had, to hold it in place. So I poured the batter, and obviously I took it off when I went to go bake it. And you have to bake this between 60 and 75 minutes. It's a long time. I just kept checking it, which is why there's all those little holes where I was testing it. You insert a knife or something in there to see if it's done. It took a really long time. So while it's very easy to get the batter together and get it in the oven, expect that it's going to take a while to cook. And I was so excited to get this ready. I was also kind of late, so I started cutting into it when it was warm, which is lovely. If you have a slice of this with some butter on top, you'll love it. It's delicious. But when you're cutting something and it's warm, you can see right there, it's like kind of breaking apart the slice a little bit. So I decided to hold my horses, put it to the side, let it cool down. It was cold outside, so I just put it on the porch and let it cool down. And then I brought it to the potluck, and they liked it a lot.